welcome to another episode once again. I just got off from the hospital, so forgive me if I'm a bit off my mark today. If you haven't seen the previous episode where I installed the stage 1 tune parts for this NX500, please check that episode out after you watch this video to have a full picture on what I've actually done to this bike. A commenter on my previous video pointed out to me that some regions globally have an extra restriction on the NX500 that needs to be removed before full power can be achieved. Basically, the restriction is that the throttle opening has been restricted with this extra plate you see here. It doesn't allow the throttle to open fully at any point. So what does it mean for us? Well, my Eurobike, as an example, is not putting out the same amount of horsepower than bikes in some other global areas like the USA. You can quite easily see if your bike has this restriction without removing any of these bigger plastics or anything on the bike. Just point a flashlight there and you can see the restriction. You can see the plate. Secondly, this means that my Airfield test on the previous episode is done with this limitation. Therefore, it does not show the full potential of this bike. So what to do about it? If you have this limiter, like mine, your bike is just slightly slower than the bikes on some other market areas globally. I will, however, now demonstrate to you how to remove this limitation from the bike, and then we will run a new test at the airfield to see the difference before and after. But a massive disclaimer to anyone planning to do this. This will not work with the stock ECU software. So you need a 550 performance ECU, or you need to have someone reconfigure the ECU to work with the full throttle position. Apparently Honda has some software limitation in the stock ECU that prevents you to do this mod. But all the 550 performance links are in the description of this video, so check them out. With all that, let's get cracking. All right, third time on the airfield with the NX500 project, because the first run I did with this bike was the stock bike, which gave me from 30 to 120, gave me 9.19 seconds. And the stage 1 tune that I did in the previous video, please check that video out if you want to see what I did to this bike. That gave me 8.3 seconds, so pretty massive difference from the stock bike. But now that we have the butterfly limitation removed, we should be able to get much more. I can already tell you that the bike pulls much better from 6,000 all the way up to the rev limiter. So we should be able to pull a lot more power from this bike on this run. And the wind condition is not as beneficial as it was last time. It's pretty calm winds today. But last time we had a bit of a headwind. But I'm still confident that this bike can do better than it did on the last run, on the last video. So let's go ahead and do the runs. All right, so the first run I'm gonna do to 10,000 RPM. Changing at 10,000 RPM. The first run I'm gonna do is changing at 10,000 RPM because the new limitation on the ECU from 550 is 10.5. So I'm gonna change gears at 10,000, then I'm gonna change gears the second run at 9,000, and maybe even a third run at 8,000, but we'll see, because I have to kind of find out what is the optimal RPM to change gear on this bike. Much better changing a little bit earlier. No need to go up to 10,000 RPM. Yeah, so much improved. We got almost a second off from the last episode, so the butterfly limitation is definitely taken away from the top end on this bike. But also consider that the wind conditions were not as good as they were on the last episode. So if the wind would have been the same, I think we could have gotten even a little bit better time. But yeah, even that being said, almost a second off from the last episode, and almost 2 seconds off from the stock bike. So definitely a big improvement on the mid-range torque and the upper range horsepower as well. So yeah, a massive difference. But I must say, do not do this tune if you have the stock ECU, because you have to configure the ECU to work with the unlimited throttle position.